Oh, sure.
Okay.
Right, so what I was in the middle of saying was, I think just fostering a very vibrant developer community, I think is something that we're keenly interested in, and because Vitalik travels the world, he's able to compare the communities as well. So maybe Audrey, you could share your thoughts on, number one, how you think our overall developer community compares to maybe some regional cities, and then maybe in your current position in the government, is there something we can do to even accelerate that? Because I mean, just as a very simple backdrop, I myself come from the hardware industry, and Taiwan's very well known for that, but less well known for the type of stuff that you do and the type of stuff that Vitalik does. So how do we move the needle on that?
Well, I mean, she's been to our hackathons. It's like we do have a very vibrant, what we call civic tech scene, and just measured by GitHub connections alone, I think one of the three topmost, about exactly equal as the Code for America network and My Society UK network, like the Open Knowledge network. So we have easily hundreds, if not thousands, of people just contributing their spare time and meeting every month or so. And bi-monthly meeting is about 100 to 600 people. And then it's entirely open space technology. We film everything again. And then we have the Slack channel that's cross-linked to a Telegram channel that's cross-linked to a Freenode channel so that everybody can choose whichever client that they're most comfortable with. So when you talk about three implementations, that reminds me of a lot of things because I maintain the chat room logbot that integrates all those incoming signals together, and you always have to keep a balance between the features that Telegram has and Slack and IRC doesn't, and IRC is upgrading also, so you have to keep some balance. And then in any case, so we have this channel that's I think 8,000 people now. I'm not exactly sure, but around that time. It started late 2012. I think when a bunch of hackers decided that the government at the time was making a film, a advertisement saying there's been an economic boost up plane, but the plan was too complex to explain, so the government doesn't even try to explain it, and then says just follow our decisions, it would be okay, which is a very absurd kind of advertisement, but it does accurately reflect the government's, the administration's mentality at the time, and so a bunch of hackers started to take the annual budget and then parse it and then put it into open spending format and then have an interactive bubble graph and whatever, right? So if you go to budget.taipei, which is a real website.
.taipei domain now?
Oh yeah, sure. And it's very hip nowadays to have a lot of top-level domains. So yeah, we joke about that we couldn't have a Gov0, which is our name for forking the government. We couldn't have a top-level Gov0 domain at the moment, right? Because it would cause a lot of confusion with the U.S. government. Just imagine FDA.gov0. Right, but we did register G0v.tw, which is very interesting because it solves the discoverability problem. When people ask about, hey, what's the visualization of the current environment, like pollution level and so on, everybody knows that it's the emv.gov.tw, which is the environmental agency. But if you change the O to a 0, then you get into the shadow government, which provides the same thing, except it's machine readable in JSON and everything, right? So that's actually our first website, budget.g0v. .tw. Right. And I wasn't part of the community at the time. It was for my friends, and then so it shows the entire annual budget, and then you can sort it by the type of like agriculture, science, debt. So you can see the national debt in relation, and it's actually been decreasing, meaning that we've been repaying our national debts.
Right.
And then the ministry is in charge of it, and then you can switch, of course, to this kind of view, which shows more detail. And the fun thing is that you can actually say, I recommend a deduction, I recommend an increase. I don't understand what this is for, and so on, right? And then it translates units, so you can see how many iPhone 5s.
How many what?
iPhone 5,
Oh.
which was at the time
I see.
newly released,
Okay.
is our annual education budget, which kind of puts an interesting perspective on budgeting. And so now if you go to budget.taipei, then it shows something very, very similar. And it actually says we fork it from F0. And then the Taipei City now commits to release its budget in machine readable form as well as PDF. And then so on exactly the same tree map, instead of just these kind of things, you can actually see a full drill down of what is actually useful.
Right.
Like this kind of thing, and then so you can actually go back to the paragraphs in PDF and see which was increased, which was decreased, and it's used it to buy some desktops, Macs, and UPS, and Nikon SB910. I don't want to know, but in any case, yeah, right. And so when the major Koenja first forked the Gov0 project again and merged it back to the city government, there's also a chat room powered by a Facebook chat room in this kind of UI. So people can click to the circle that they're interested in, and then have a real conversation around, like you're going to construct a park. Why didn't I see the bulldozers?
Right.
Or the other way around. And in other case, people would be concerned by some like animal welfare or something that I care about, so I would question about this. And much to people's surprise, after 3 weeks, all the city officials in all the bureaus goes online on the same chat room, and then reply to every single one of them. And so it's kind of a bypass of the normal city council. It enables what we call a social object. Before, a budget was just one row in a huge Excel, but now this is a foreign topic.
Interesting.
And then people can have a real conversation of it. So that was almost 4 years ago now. So after that, people started applying the same model, not just to the budget, but also to everything, to environment, to healthcare, to electricity, to all the basic information. And after 2 years of working on that, the deputy premier at the time issued a directive that says every single government ICT system that's constructed for less than 1 million euros must open data by default, no exceptions. Of course, taking account into national security, privacy, and trade secrets, but after that, no exceptions. So suddenly we have a lot of data to play with. And then now we're sort of working on the writable side, like we have all the readable data, but now we want a API index so to make them all compatible. And then we also want an API that's writable.
So what kinds of things will people write?
A lot of things. So there's a mashup of the real, the first high profile case was the real price map, what they call 实价登录地图, because there was a lot of speculation 4 years ago about.
By the way, Vitalik can read and write Chinese.
Well,
Really?
not that good a tradition.
Okay. I can switch to Singapore. I'm agnostic. I don't care. Okay. Right. Right. If you go to Gov0 Asia, there's a lot of projects listed there, and I'll just. So like this is the Ministry of Interiors, right? And then this is the fork of it. Right, so now we can go to Taipei City, and then see all the traded houses and so on around
And
it.
those are the prices that they're get bought and sold for?
Right, exactly, and then you can filter whether it's for offices, whether it's apartments or elevators, and so on, and then you can get a very quick idea of what the general prices is around our area. And then we have another, which you may find interesting, project, which is, well, the one that I maintain, called the Moai Dictionary, which stands for Ministry of Education Dictionary. And then for each of the, like, I don't know, there must be one for either. Well,
You got the E-Rod? Never the first one.
Regular expressions. Right. So
Oh, cool. Yeah.
yeah. So then it offers you some explanation, but also offers the English, French, and German
Cool.
of it, and then you can, for example, which is the universe. And then in Taiwan, of course, we don't speak only Mandarin Chinese. There's also Taiwanese Holok, and there's also Taiwanese Hakka. And then so for the Taiwanese Holok, you just cross-link to it, and then it will just read the unit for you. And then there's also, of course, the Hakka version, which is very complicated with there's 6 different dialects. But you can like listen to all the 6 dialects, something like that, right? And then if you're learning writing Chinese, then it writes for you, and so on, right? And so and it could also be cross-linked backwards, right? So if you either, right? And then there's also that kind of ether, which is a chemical.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Ether oxide, right?
Right.
Right. So so this is very useful. Obviously, it's about 10 million visits per month, and mostly because people use it to just say random words, and then it generates a calligraphic representation for you, and then like all sort of different scripts. Right. And so and then so you can see a lot of these kind of things on Facebook. Because on Facebook, if you have a picture, then it's like 10 times more viral than compared if you only have a link. But if you just get a random picture, first it may not fit your message. Second, you may be in copyright violation, right? But through this, which is guaranteed to be free from anyway, you can generate a OG image like in no time. Right. So if I want to make a Facebook post and I don't have a picture for it, I just make a message for it, and then it becomes viral. So this actually was the virality engine for many of the social campaigns here in Taiwan. Right. And then there's a lot of other things. If you want to know the convenient animal, if you want to know how exactly the pollution level is like around Taipei, which is actually pretty bad today. And then whether you want this is a新闻小帮手, which means like beware, you may be the victim of a counterfeit news. Right. This is a red of the Windows alert. Right. So what this does is that when you install this browser plugin, whenever you see a counterfeit news on Facebook, you can report it. There's a new link next to link, comment, and share. Right, and then once sufficient number of people report it, editor would take notes, like Wikipedia, right? And then of course there's a discussion board here. And then but once it's verified as fake, then everybody who installed this plugin will see. Beware that you may be a.
That's useful.
It's very crowded, useful. And then first this is the budget, and this is the what we call the legislative cinema, which is a real-time feed that works across all the browsers to make it's like a C-SPAN, right? But available in a chat room style, so that you can like present flowers or whatever to the person doing the inquiry, and then it's made into a social enterprise, and then you can use it to like see all the queries that went, and then how everybody is doing on the budget cycle. And then this then became a campaign during the January election, so that if you care about one of the social issues, like the curriculum, like judiciary reform, and then marriage equality, recall, and so on, and nuclear energy, of course, and then you can go into it, and then it will analyze you all the major parties and who exactly are for or against, but which is done by our CSO, civil society organization people, but the backbone of it is what we call a SAID system, which is a complete archive of all the transcripts in a form that is structured data. So for every judgment that, okay, so this guy is against marriage equality, we cite one specific sentence that he had said back in some day, and then so basically this is what we do for our public deliberations. we have this kind of structured data that you can very easily link to in context, of course.
Yeah.
And then we then use this to do some data mining, and then find keywords about marriage equality, and then this I think really changed many of the younger generations' perspective, because otherwise they don't really have a way to tell one senior legislative member from another, right? So then of course we use the domain legislative.gov0 that developed, which you can then look at all the candidates in all the legislative regions, like this Taipei City, New Taipei City, and so on, and then compare, like all at once, exactly of the 5 people running for that region, their campaign donation records, their campaign spendings, which votes they did, and what platforms they have. And the campaign spending was actually generated by another Gov0 project that went into a building called Creative Yuan, which holds only the paper of all the tables, and then we took it down and then used OpenCV to cut it into cells, and then set up a game for people to play catch up and have a progress bar, and so people digitize it into this kind of efforts, and then we get maybe 10,000 contributors the first 24 hours, and digitize some 300,000 things. So it's been a thing. It's very interesting. Everything's a game.
It's interesting.
Everything's a game, and everything is Creative Commons or open source license, and so there's a lot of reuse across the board. That's the community. So it's not even just Gov0 anymore. It's a loose coalition of everybody who sees something wrong or something that's inadequate with the government website or with government information system, and goes, okay, well, we can do it better. That's
One thing that bridges these two worlds is actually a project that Abby's been developing called Polling Clock. So it's based on Ethereum, and it's for essentially for voting, except you get as a reward some amount of ether that the poll taker puts up, right, as a bounty. And I think you can.
Yeah. Actually, the concept of the polling block is say. For example, if one guy needs to know what's the reaction in the society about marriage equality, then he or her can initiate a post, initiate a vote, and it will be like they support marriage equality and yes or no or whatever answer it is, and any people can get on and vote, and because the transparency of the blockchain, and the blockchain will record every voter's address, and after the vote is closed, and the voters will get a certain amount of reward on Ether or something like that. And the meaning of this polling block is just like the GOV is open and the transparency about any social topic or any topics you want to concern, and just make it open. Like even we think about maybe we can try like a U.S. president election on the polling block. It might be possible in the future.
Yeah. We found an opportunity to give a demonstration to the talent, to Audrey.
I'm sure. Right. So there's a lot of interest on like securing a next generation democracy.
Right.
And this kind of just goes back to the fact that you were just saying that this is between a market and voting, and of all the blockchain discussions that I've been to, there's always this kind of tension of the individual agents who want to maximize their return to their efforts so far, and then the agents who want to ensure the stability of the system to maximize the total social impact in the future. So what's your take?
It's. I mean, one of the reasons why we've some of us actually call like blockchain protocol design crypto economics is that it's incorporates like aspects of cryptography, aspects of economics, and like aspects of both computer science and social science at the same time. And it is about mathematical formulas and about like how human beings behave at the same time. So like even at like such low levels as like how does the consensus algorithm work, and how do you know that blocks are going to keep on being made on top of the same chain instead of on top of the different chains or on top of the same block? You know, like even things as basic as that. You know, it's all to some degree an economics question. To some degree, it's a question of like can you use incentives to try to like align people, like minors' individual interests with the interest of the system continuing to work securely in the long term. It's and look, once you go into like higher levels, if you're looking at things like DAOs, like you see a lot of the exact same things being discussed as well. I'd say it's what.
Maybe you know
you can use the iPad.
Yeah, no problem.
I think
Uh-huh.
that you've been talking primarily about public chains and
Yeah,
what it takes to keep those
Right.
going. You know, I think let me give an example of a somewhat more hybrid system where it's a somewhat more constrained environment, but I think, Audrey, it's very much an example of what you described, which is there is an existing system which maybe has a mandate for universal access,
Yeah.
right? And this is many times a government mandated or sanctioned system. And then there's a more market-driven dynamic where maybe a subset of society, maybe for a specific purpose that's just emergent, could very quickly band together and create an economy, transactions between themselves using a blockchain. And then the question becomes, well, because this subset, they want ultimately to be grounded in society, they don't want to be just off in their own virtual world. There is an interface between these two worlds. And in our example, it's in the area of finance, or specifically payments, where we clearly have a well-functioning banking system, but especially for emergent applications, whether it's machine payments, whether it's micropayments between individuals, there's probably still too much friction. Now, let me caveat this by saying, if for emergent applications, there's just a simple dominant player, then there's no need for blockchain. Everything just happens within this dominant player's ecosystem. But we believe that Taiwan is more of a distributed, perhaps even a fragmented market, where there are network effects to be captured, but not always, perhaps at least in the beginning, justifying a large-scale investment to bring these players together. And blockchain is a relatively low-cost way to do that. So the example I'll give is micropayments, anything below, let's say, 1,000 NT. If there were one dominant mobile wallet operator here in Taiwan, there would be no need for blockchain because everybody all the merchants, all the consumers would just use that platform. But so far that hasn't emerged. And if we had to prognosticate, just judging by how many banks we have, we'll probably have a fair number of mobile wallet operators.
I think the favorite word now is multi-central, right? We have a multi-central system.
Yeah, and so the question becomes to bring some order to those multi-centers, because those centers still have to interact with each other. Do we create one big center around which those multi-centers revolve, or can they just peer amongst themselves and get the job done?
Sure.
And so that's the experiment we've been doing for the last 9 months or so. But the sensitivity comes and the complication comes when that multi-centered system, which is a kind of an opt-in type deal, wants to interface with the existing system, which, as you put it, has a mandate for stability and universality and all that stuff.
Sure.
And so the question is, how do these worlds coexist, if at all? And that's something we're dealing with now, and I think that the government, I believe, by almost necessity, will need to look at this and guide the situation to some extent or other.
Well, we've been looking at this. I mean, I've been looking at this for years now. Well, and ever since, see, all my background knowledge comes from the original cypherpunks minimalist, which we dream about a lot of those things until Bitcoin came along and implemented a lot of them, right? And then, but there's a lot of small-scale experiments, and especially around the eras of Nutella and Napster and so on, around P2P systems.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those experiments taught us something in that it's always, if it's something of value, it's always spontaneous, it's always beyond your design. and if it's within your design, most of the time it didn't work out.
Right. And you haven't, so let me make it perhaps a little bit more concrete,
Sure.
which is if I have a self-forming opt-in ecosystem where, using blockchain technology, their platforms can trade value with one another. And what I mean by instead of drifting off into la la land, if they want to anchor their token of value or their unit of value with the government issued money, right? So that's the token we're still used to most of the time. And if those entities happen to be banks in this case, which are highly regulated entities, do we allow them to do so, or do we come back to the mandate of universality and say that, well, there is only one government in Taiwan, just like there is only one standing military and one, fiat money, and then that's probably a good thing, but do we, the analogy I'll draw is, roughly 30 years ago when, at least in the United States, email started taking on some scale, and the US Postal Service looked at this and says, well, you guys are clearly sending ASCII characters to each other, and that's really my bailiwick, because I'm responsible for transporting, letters between entities, yeah? So the US Postal Service indeed tried to do email and even kind of say that's its business, but over some years, 1 or 2 years, it came to the realization that email is probably best left as a market-driven, opt-in type thing. But obviously, value transfer, especially if it's denominated in a unit of account that we're used to, which is government money, is much more sensitive than just passing ASCII characters around.
I don't know, but
Well, okay. I don't know either. But essentially, Audrey, that's what we're experimenting with right now, and there's a question of public and private roles.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, but it took a long time for the US to cede control of the internet domain name system to multi-stakeholders, which happened just this year, right? And there's a huge amount of controversy within the internet community around this. Basically, nobody really knows whether what we call the open multi-stakeholder governance model.
Does it work?
How does it work? What it even is?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. It depends a lot on who the stakeholders are. I think the other crucial thing is it depends upon the framework on which they interact.
Exactly. Right. So I mean, we're after all still human beings, and then so the frequency of how we meet, the format of how we meet, the binding power of each meeting, how the binding power propagates from one space to less empowered spaces, and so on. These were theoretical constructs, but there's been no, constitutional formulation of these things. And of course, you can say, the U.S. Constitution is also a legal fiction, but it's a legal fiction from the Hamiltons and Jeffersons who propagates long enough so that it's ingrained into the language itself, so that we can talk about those words and know that we mean more or less the same thing. But in an MSG or OMSG, a multi-stakeholder governance model, just exactly what what inclusion means, what digital governance means, it's actually, flame wars of 1,000 emails going on around this kind of stuff. What I'm saying is, as a anarchist, I of course,
You're an anarchist.
I am. It's actually on my appointment. I said to the public that I'm a conservative anarchist, and I'm an anarchist meaning that I believe that it is my strong belief that any bottom-up consensus is of a higher quality than a top-down directive.
Here. We don't have peers, otherwise.
Right. Yes. But I'm conservative, meaning I don't want rapid changes, because if
you don't want what?
Rapid changes that sacrifice the majority of human behind, and then just maybe 1 or 2 transhumans goes on and rule the world. That's the dystopic scenario. So I'm conservative in both sides, meaning that I want to conserve the freedom of the internet, the freedom of multi-stakeholder model that we've been experimenting with, but interface it slowly so that people can form a new vocabulary
Yeah.
and have a conversation with it. And I'm conservative in this part also, in that we have human values like liberty, equality, whatever. And these things are as important as the freedoms that we're seeking here. And so it's a slow bridge instead of one taking the other out or one erasing the other. And I think it's the only reasonable way nowadays to make anarchism work, because it's by definition by people's volition. But if people don't even have the same vocabulary, the term volition means nothing. Yeah, so that's my political statement. Yeah, but I do want to go back about the regulation side, especially around government issue money, because at the moment it's not illegal to trade blockchain assets, for lack of a better term, thank you, assets in either in Taiwanese law or in any of these nearby countries. It's strictly legal, and there's of course no law saying that as a distributed database you cannot use it instead of MongoDB or whatever for financial transactions and clearing. So whatever you're doing as experiments are completely legal.
Absolutely. I mean, as far as the letter of the law is concerned, it's fine.
Yeah.
What this is more about is bureaucratic inertia and simple habits.
Exactly.
And so I agree with you, by the way. I mean, just as it's been 30 years now, but email has not replaced the post office, and it's not going to. In
We
fact,
still print things. You know?
we still print things, and if anything, we've generated more parcel traffic for the post office. Yeah.
Exactly.
Neither do I believe that the system that I described or we're experimenting with is going to replace the existing, central, banking system. But it's a matter of the velocity, I suppose, and whether we allow this thing to happen at all. Because for whatever reason, if you think about it, the internet protocol has penetrated every walk of life, I would say, to its core, other than finance. And what is finance at its core? It's just a ledger.
Information.
It's just a ledger. Yeah.
Well, you haven't, governance is still not there.
There you go. Okay, fine. But
As an anarchist.
But finance and governance, crypto economy, I think these things are tightly coupled.
They are.
And so you're right. This is the last bastion, and nobody's suggesting storming the Bastille. It's more about, can we have a civil conversation and reason this out over a course of years.
Sure.
So I think we're just in the opening rounds of that. We're a year ago, when we had nothing to show, these institutions would not take us seriously. But now I feel that not only are they taking us seriously, but they're in some way overreacting. So we're just coming back. It's a startup transient, and what does the steady state look like? And I think that Audrey, with somebody like you that understands both sides.
Some of these are just allergies. You don't need to worry too much about this. As with any new technology or new material, there's bound to be some allergies. But to a stable state, what I think we need to ultimately show is not just one or two demo products that works better, more efficiently, or so on, because there's always going to be more interesting quantum technologies that takes this role. What I think the experiment would benefit from is a conversation around the governance model. Like I would really like to learn how those three implementations. Do you meet face to face? Do you meet through FaceTime? How do you run the country?
Can I use your?
Sure, go ahead. Straight ahead and to the right.
I mean, actually, it's pretty much all online.
Sure.
Like, literally everything in the internet happens online. Like, our favorite tools are probably Gitter, Skype, email,
Sure.
a bit of WeChat. And also, and GitHub itself, of course. So far, like the way that Ethereum makes its protocol changes is we have this concept of EIPs, which are Ethereum improvement proposals, kind of like the Python like PEPs and so forth. And like you can read them all at GitHub. So if you go to like github.com /Ethereum /EIPs/issues, there we go. Yeah. And then if you click on /issues, then you can just see like the list of them there, and there's like all of them. And like each one, like a lot of them, they have comments. There's public discussion. People talk amongst themselves. I mean, most of the time, like these, when a proposal is mature enough, then like, so far, if all the clients or the developers agree with each other, it just gets implemented. It moves over to testing stage, and like once the tests are written, once we've seen that all the clients are in consensus, decide on a hard fork date. I would honestly say that, like to some degree, that like I feel like governance models in general are necessarily unspecified to some extent until they're fully tested. Like it's
it's just like an open source project then.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
really,
a rough consensus.
Exactly, yeah. And that's well, if you look at, I mean, something like the DAO or fork, right? That was something that was genuinely controversial to some extent. It was like a change where a lot of people were strongly in favor of it. A lot of people had reasons to strongly oppose it.
Right.
And what ended up happening was we had like a carbon vote. Or there was a site called Carbon Vote where like anyone who had Ether could basically vote with their Ether, and that was the way that we ended up kind of polling the community, and the result was. Is it working?
No.
Well,
I was
it
just
was
checking.
right, but it was about it ended up being about 83% in favor, and like that happened. But then, of course, after the fork itself, then 4 days later, one of the Bitcoin exchanges decided to list like the other fork of the chain, Ethereum Classic, and then the market turned into a voting mechanism. And like even though like we expect that in most cases things happen just through rough consensus between developers, like I feel like the edge cases are also important because the edge cases will basically motivate how people act in the normal case. Like if it's like even if the nukes never go off, the existence of nukes does change how people act, and so that's. So yeah, like at this point, like I hope that like chaotic forks don't are not something that happens frequently, but even still, the possibility of what is an important pressure and ensuring that developers don't propose changes that look and quickly coordinate to implement changes that lots of people find disagreeable.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually read about the carbon vote case because it's very interesting. You have rough consensus among the lawmakers essentially, because what you're using is essentially highly legal language that nobody really can enter, right?
Right.
And then you have a popular referendum, which in all senses is a referendum, in which I don't know 5% or so of your constituents participated, which in any other democratic country would be far too low. Right.
Although if you look at like crypto referendums in general, look, we're not the only ones that did this, right? If you look at BitShares, they have crypto votes on everything. Even the DAO had crypto votes. The turnout is always between like 4 and 15%.
Right. I'm not disputing this. And then for participatory budgeting, which we can compare to this too, then the standard rate is around 4 or 5%. And then you have people who are really stakeholders who come in instead of the whole country, right? But I do have a few questions. During the carbon vote, if I understand correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, there's about 10% or so of Ethers locked in the DAO.
It's not locked. Yes, correct. Yeah.
Right. So they couldn't vote.
Correct.
So isn't that discrimination?
Kind of. Although to be fair though, like Ether that was locked in the vote would have wanted the fork to happen, so it was actually like it ended up winning despite.
Sure.
Well,
you got lucky because it's overwhelming, yes.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, if it's a slightly
if it was like 50-50, then yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
I think realistically speaking, like in this kind of a vote, like if it was 52-48, I don't think we would have done it.
Exactly. Because then because you're forgetting all those silent yes. And then you're not exactly sure there's silent yeses.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So then it goes back to somewhat arbitrary, like the family members of a country level.
That's what Vitalik says, basically. Not quite, but
I mean, you could say that in the U.S. there's a debate on whether or not people in prison should be allowed to vote.
Exactly.
So
yes.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Well, the U.S. doesn't have 12% of people in prison.
It's getting close.
Maybe close. but I'm not like commenting on how U.S.
Yeah.
people over there. I'm not commenting on your politics, especially this close to election. So, right. So, but no. What I'm asking is not questioning the legitimacy. I'm wondering how exactly it can evolve beyond this point of highly specialized rough consensus and a referendum that's maybe participated by 5% of the people in optimal cases.
Yeah. I think. And first of all, if we want to talk about like how it could or should evolve or improve, then we have to identify what the issues are, what kinds of things we might want.
Right. Yes.
So, like one thing that might be good, for example, is to have more participation. So, like for all these EIPs to actually have, 30 comments on them instead of two comments, and for people to actually feel informed enough about the issues to participate. Another one is probably for like discussion to try to move even further to like where all the debates happening in public forums instead of like sort of oral or like the equivalent of oral discussions between people. That like it's something that we've been starting to move toward because we have public Gitter channels where people can just hop on and like talk to developers and listen to developers talking. There's like public Skype channels and so forth. That's something that's, it's not perfect. Like there's still things where like it just feels like for efficiency, there's like there's a pressure to just have a discussion between three people and sort things out. Yeah, yeah, that's something that would probably continue having to balance between. Like even the concept of EIPs itself is an improvement like that actually came out. Came upon about 12 months ago, because like before then, basically the Ethereum protocol specification was figured out through Skype conversations, and we wanted to try to. Actually, the original motivated reason why this stuff started getting developed is because before all of the developers were inside the Ethereum Foundation, and when everyone is inside the Ethereum Foundation, then like you have this sort of centralized structure, people feel like they can act inside of it, but then we have this sort of diaspora where we're up to three clients that are being used, and two of them are actually being done outside of the foundation. And so, that by itself created a need for more exactly. So I feel like one of the conclusions that I feel is important is I'm a bit skeptical of attempts to be sort of open and multi-stakeholder in the abstract. Like I feel like the approaches that work the best is when you identify specific sort of concrete problems that you have and realize that those problems are issues are because you're not being open enough in some particular way.
Right. Yes.
And,
so you're also conservative in that regard.
Right. Yeah.
You're not progressive in that you want to push this model.
Well, I mean, it's
for its own sake.
pragmatic, I think.
Yeah.
It's like you want to you always want to sort of have the ultimate values that you had, but you also want to have an understanding of sort of what those values are ultimately serving.
It was quite impressive to me back in June during the Dow incident, because literally as it was happening, we had the occasion to have dinner. And I remember clearly just saying, hey, doesn't this go against the grain of the whole blockchain ethos? But Vitalik simply answered, well, we don't want the thief to walk off with $60 million. So, at some point you diff whatever airy ideals you have against reality. And, one thing that has attracted us to not Bitcoin, this is in contrast to the Bitcoin community, but the Ethereum developer community is that, yes, it is a blockchain in the public sense that Bitcoin is, but I think there's a strain of practicality that, for us at least, is very attractive. And you see that in Vitalik's decision making as well.
Sure. I was involved in a pretty large fork, the Perl language, which was very bitter, right? And it happened 10 years ago, actually more than 10 years ago, right? And then, but now we're finished, right? It's done. Pro 6 is released. Pro 5 is still living pretty well. And then people generally see those as two friendly languages, which steal each other's features all the time, and remain some part of compatibility.
Yeah.
And what I learned during all the bitterness and all the infighting and all the outfighting, something very similar happened to the PHP community when they tried to introduce Unicode. Something very similar happened to the Python community when they tried to introduce background compatible changes as part of Python 3. And of course not as violent as Pro 6, but all of it was the same structure. And all of them resolved, well, in slightly different ways. I mean, PHP did a completely redone, right? The original form was abandoned. But I think what we did was that we walked away with a sense of a greater unity. That the world is not just exist for our own sake, to further, because most of the people who fight this much is because they want to protect their legacy. In a sense, their savings. Right. If you have status, if you have like 100 modules, if you have a well-run consultancy or whatever, or an industry really structuring around this legacy, that you have a lot of investment, you wouldn't want to think of it as sunk cost. But that's essentially what it is. Because what we're saying is that the protocol itself is changing underneath you, and then whether you like it or not, because it's responding to reality. It's not something that people do it out of malice or something. It's just we have multi-core computers now, or people use emoji now. You have to support Unicode outside the basic multi-linguistic plan, and so on. So this is the new reality, and then we need to respond to that. And I think this actually unifies people instead of divide people, but it may take years for people to see that it's a unifying force.
I don't know. I mean, just judging by the turnout at DevCon 2 last month, I felt like that was water under the bridge, and it's onward, and it's quite impressive to me. I mean, I didn't attend DevCon 1, so I had nothing to compare it against, but I mean, there were like 700 devs for 3 days there, and it was only 3 months after the DAO, so it's like...
Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying is that the DAO itself is basically a incident. It's more like a crisis response or incident response. What I'm saying is that it may grow to a point, more like the Bitcoin block size thing, like there's a fundamental reality that a fundamental protocol needs to respond to. And then you'll have more escalations. And that's when the multi-stakeholder model comes under test. Because some stakeholder would say, my stake is not your stakes.
So the other interesting thing is that I think time pressures can also change the dynamics.
Exactly.
Like with the DAO situation, basically it had to be resolved in 35 days.
There's a time bomb, yes.
Whereas with the block size debate, it's this sort of slowly boiling kettle, and it's the default is that nothing happens, and you do have months and years in order to resolve it. So it's I feel like if the block size debate had been the sort of situation where, unless something was done with before February 28th, then the entire blockchain would completely collapse. Then the results
come up with something.
Yeah, exactly. The results would have been different.
Well, I think
we have to probably move on.
Yeah, sure.
But the talk's around until Tuesday afternoon, right? So, Audrey, if you...
Well, now I know Vitalik's preferred mode of communication is online, and we'll continue online.
Yeah, okay, that works too.
Yeah, so. and then just to add a word, what we're doing, which I'll send you a link, is essentially putting a 60-day or 90-day, which we're designing there, time frame for all the regulations in Taiwan coming forward, and in exactly the same way as you described, with a participation. There was, and actually FinTech Sandbox is one of the issues where we does a rolling stakeholder survey, and then a briefing slide by the governing agency. And then within 30 days, we have to come up with some questions, and then within the next 30 days, we have to come up with a set of suggestions and so on. There's a well-oiled process that we use it to make company law and so on. So I completely agree that if you put 30 days as the limit between each stages and have it take 2 or 3 stages, it's actually much better than say, okay, we have 120 days, do something. Yeah, so I think that applies especially for climate change hypeers. And then because it really forces people to come to some sort of rough consensus, even though there's no
Right,
no, like fine consensus.
Wow, I think this is the first time the parallels between climate issues and the block size debate actually clicked in my head.
Okay.
That's what I just asked you this morning, right? Which is, I think these two are actually intimately related.
Mhm.
How does the world come to a rough consensus on climate change mitigation in this case? And that's actually one of the reasons I got into blockchain some years ago, which is, climate change is an issue that animates me, and I felt that there had to be some connection. So
Right.
great,
So
thanks for having us
I'll
over.
later more,
Yeah.
and I'll send you emails.
Thank you.
Okay.
Need the restroom?
Speaking of saving the environment, you can have your card back as a photo.
Okay, sure. Yay.